Grand Rising. Good morning to you, beautiful friends. We're gonna do something a little bit different. I just woke up actually, and my voice is still very husky. I wake up pretty hyper, in all honesty. So I have a very special fondness for anybody in my heart that chooses to deal with me early in the morning. In fact, I kind of have a rule. And it's not like, oh, if you don't follow it, then you're gonna die. It's more for everybody involved. If you could perhaps just give me a nod, not necessarily engage with me until you're ready to engage, then that's probably gonna do wonders for us. But I am up, and actually, what kind of prompted this, I had the most amazing dream last night. I've been revisiting the Bhagavad Gita, and just, yeah, good stuff. I think I mentioned the Pistis Sophia as well. But in the Gita, especially, it is part of one of like the longest and oldest historical poems, and it is essentially about the creation of the universe and the battles between light and darkness. And the Gita itself focuses on Arjuna, who is a war, I don't want to say like war chief, he's a prince, he is the hero of the story. And he is met with turmoil because he's on the battlefield and he is about to go to war against his brothers, his cousins, his family, and his heart hurts because he's really struggling with that. And his charioteer, who happens to be Lord Krishna, then unveils himself and explains to him in depth, the birth, death, reprocess, the fact that the soul is eternal, that these are all essentially the steps and the roles that we play on our way to our next journeys. And so it prompted me to want to wake up and speak on that. I have taken some time to really step back and observe, because even when I had started posting videos and wanting to just create a different kind of content, so much of it wasn't from the most peaceful place in my heart, in all honesty, as much as it was right intention, so to speak. And it was like, oh, I don't like the fact that maybe people aren't challenging themselves to think, or oh my goodness, and I'm so tired of this dark psychology trick 101 says the strongest person in the room is the one that can go silent the longest. Just these ways that I feel that we as people, funnily enough, like Arjuna, he's battling the forces of darkness. It's these ways that people could be observed as perhaps giving into like the lower levels of the polarity on their humanity, not acting in their righteousness. And it's tough because, as I've mentioned, I'm a person of faith, so it almost can inherently sound very corny in certain ways. But even like God, source, spirit, the light that I believe in, as a practitioner of Christ, even of Jesus Christ, it's very interesting how so many that have come close to their faith and really are motivated and guided by it, and have that as the backbone of the principles of the life that they lead, they all seem to comment that God to a certain extent is unknowable. And so it is very ironic to me that certain organized religion bases would try to then tell you that they get it, and what they have to say is the most godly interpretation of God's interpretations, when as far as I see it, all of it is the creation of an omnipotent God source, be it good, bad, light, dark. And that is something that's actually touched upon in the Gita. It mentions it in the King James Bible as well. I believe it's Solomon, if I'm not mistaken, but it's I am the creator of the light and the dark. And so it's very interesting. To go kind of sideways, even the Ten Commandments of the King James Bible that we know, or even, if you don't want to interpret it that way, the laws of Moses, the Abrahamic laws, the alleged 10 infallible laws, which is also very interesting. I've mentioned in past videos William Donahue. If we were to look at the Bible more metaphorically, as in, Moses parting the Red Seas, your red root chakra, as in what has you tethered to this earth, getting over our primordial humanistic type impulses. If Exodus is quite literally us moving up the 7 seals and the 7 chakras, Jacob's ladder, the 33 vertebrae, to get to Christ consciousness, the pineal gland and the right hemisphere of the brain, peace, understanding, not necessarily the left side logic brain, and trying to potentially cause divination, the more primal dominance, superiority via, mass. Gosh, insert whatever. As I continue on this journey, I know I've mentioned even like the moment that we open our mouths to speak, we lie. But language is so interesting and interchangeable. And like I said, I had started just making these videos because I was in a place of pain and healing, and just at least wanted to do it in a more constructive way, because I can sometimes just be so disillusioned and disenchanted and disheartened by the pain and the confusion and everything that I see in this world. What we model as success, chasing money, and people feeling so unfulfilled, and as I see it, absolutely lacking purpose. Because again, even contributing to our society, that I have to wonder if deep down we all understand that the society that we're contributing to up to this point isn't actually like as loving and civilized and evolved as we would like to try and portray it. I mentioned that sometimes I get weird with like AI chat, or even just the way that I can research things. And I did actually have a conversation into which AI and I had deduced that sadly, all of our societal structures up until this point are still steeped in a level of psychopathy, because of the fact that we allow people to die on the streets. We make people prove their value before intrinsically taking care of them. So it is a very real truth that to get ahead in this life, you are quite possibly leaving so many people behind and letting them suffer. And, we look at these moral labels like good, bad, etc., and they're interchangeable. They are. I mean, it's very true that you cannot necessarily take care of other people if you are not strong enough to even take care of yourself. But it's also true that we can always do and help people. And it's unfortunate how kind of sometimes holding these observations, these critical thoughts, being perceived as like observationally defiant or oppositionally defiant, perhaps just not agreeing, not normalizing, or just speaking up. Gosh, it makes people uncomfortable. Comment feeds. So, like the term troll, it is very interesting. A lot of times I can be perceived as a troll because in aforementioned reels on YouTube, I will sometimes have content just come in, and it's so meaningless to me. Actors and actresses eating the hottest ghost pepper wings, and I'll make a comment like, this is just so wasteful. It borderlines on useless. And then all of a sudden, send in the clowns that also are going for an internet lynch mob because apparently I'm just the most awful person, and how dare I, and I think I'm so much better than everybody, and blah, blah, blah. No, I don't. Actually, I'm the brat that's so kind of sad and sick of all of it that I'm just like, I roll, and I can't help but have a visceral reaction. And as much as I seek understanding, it's like, yeah, I understand. You just want to distract yourself. Get a better hobby. And so, and this is a weaker one because like you see a lot of the revenge type. Oh, the office lunch thief has stolen lunch, and then someone walks by coughing profusely. See if they like habaneros, or I put X-Lax in my lunch. One was about Sharpies, and keeping around like dead, dry Sharpies. And specifically, in case someone, finds out that people steal Sharpies from them, which is funny to me because I'm kind of a nutter about my Sharpies. I have them in different colors, but I like them to be a particular sharpness and can only use, okay, I will use them no matter what. But then if it makes sense as the sharpness and the point gets to certain sizes, like they have different functions. That's the kind of neuroses that I'm working with amongst other things. But for me, it's actually the pettiness. Like, I truly believe that we all make mistakes, that we are growing and learning. And I have experienced horrible energies in that process. Like, people in their learning experience have hurt me, not meaning to. I shouldn't say their actions, but then perhaps their choices in being, confronted with that have hurt me. Like, I have experienced violence, I have experienced trauma. And this is not to dismiss or to try and tell any other person how they should consider healing, but it is just the mindset that we are hurting ourselves every time that we choose to act on these lower based impulses. Quite literally, because of the hormonal effects, the physiology, just the cortisol, the adrenaline, then even the way the dopamine is released and the relief that we think that we're seeing, perhaps. But I guess more importantly, if let's say that you're like not even a person of like science or of faith, right? Let's say it's literally just like you're a person of science, or you get what you give. And not that there, I guess, is inherently anything wrong with hypocrisy. I think so. I am not to be a hypocrite, and I don't necessarily like to hang out with people that I observe as hypocrites. But to not necessarily be willing to like extend the same compassion or the same benefits like that you would hope to receive from others, it's contributing to like this moral decay of our society. And in all honesty, it doesn't actually prove the bigger person. Like, that you go low, I go lower. And I have, I'm happened to have walked this earth now for, many, many years. So it wasn't always easy. In fact, Schadenfreude is a very real thing. Like, you had it coming. This is what you get because this is the kind of person that you are. But that's just it. It's heartbreaking. These types of people will continue to suffer and they will continue to struggle. Like, truly, no revenge. I am friends with one of my exes. He's the only one that I can manage to be friends with. And it only is in that it had enough time, enough space had to pass for us to absolutely be at that point where I was like, see, like, he had to be, I don't even want to say like in agreement, but we had to be on the same page that, we don't work romantically. And as much as we we have love and had that romantic love for each other, we can't work to that. It doesn't go that way. So it took many years, even after the breakup, to get to that point. And it is interesting because just human nature. It's not even about being right or wrong, and it breaks my heart. And of course, I try to be there for this friend in the ways that I can, but the ways that they choose to continue to almost make the same choices and live out the same patterns, and as an outside observer, it's just heartbreaking sometimes. And so actually, funnily, it ties back to even Krishna, and earlier when we were speaking about like the 10 commandments, thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. William Donahue talks about that, but Krishna does even in the Gita as well, that technically speaking, like on our soul's path, that because of reincarnation, because we all get to where we're supposed to get, it is the most bitter truth and the bitterest pill to swallow, but we can't necessarily harm another in that way. And obviously, don't get me wrong, this is not me advocating for murder. In fact, I think the loss of life is so sacred. I think that's actually why people are such psychos and want to murder murderers. And that, speaking of hypocrisy, if you don't believe in murder, go on your hunger strike. Okay, we'll talk about it. in about 8 weeks. And again, this is one of those things to where we, I think, sinners judging other sinners for sinning differently. And so I speak to myself because I swear to you, just the background that I had, having lots of trauma, just growing up in a time where there was just so much in your face, just violence, sexualization, just all of that. We definitely, to an extent, are a product of, our diets, the society, just the cultural values and the views and the things, the concepts that we experience. And if we do not think to question those things, if we do just take it on authority, never kind of really understanding that everything is still based on an individualized perception anyway, and even to agree is a very logical fallacy. It's kind of the first misstep. Like, we are so lost. We are so self-assured, and we think we know what we're talking about. We think we know what we're doing, but we don't even necessarily take the time to consider how any particular action or actions are multiple things. They exist as multiple types of energies, even multiple actions. I.e., making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You're not just feeding yourself. You're dirtying dishes. You're possibly creating more work for someone else. You are actually getting a bit of a workout in. So it's the curse of thinking so much, I tell you. But essentially, there is no wrong action. And that is, funnily enough, why I think a Buddhist, I think a lot of things, but that is one of the observations and one question that I can't help but ponder. If perhaps, dang it, I lost my point. It's, we have all of this energy. And again, even like the you go low, I'll go lower. I have found just how life-changing things can be when you quite literally just take all of that energy, and as opposed to externalizing, just focusing on what you can do, what you're able to do, how you're showing up. And it's just, it's great. Let me give you a great example. Work is interesting. I'm at a very similar place that I was a couple of years ago, to where I am learning and training, and some of my job functions have changed. My schedule has changed. Just everything. I've been so challenged. And I did have to go through this at one point. And at that point, just the support system, the structures that I had, it was not necessarily the best transition. And I think that in some ways we can oftentimes be our own worst enemy. But again, no wrong missteps. But it's a very different experience now to just handle myself differently, handle the way I show up. And then, I wanted to speak on all of that. So essentially, kind of hopefully trying to tie it all together, because me, if you've checked out a couple videos, I go all over the place. And then now I've also incorporated that, gotta be mindful of the clock, because you'll be going to work soon, girlfriend. So on the battlefield, when Krishna is revealing himself to Arjuna, and even talking about karmas and dharma, and just us getting closer toward the light, I would just say that it is my hope for you that you find the strength and the understanding to sit with all parts of yourself, the good, the bad, what have you, and really to an honest inventory. Science is great. Science is fun. We need it. But silence is violence, a la the form of compliance. And in a lot of ways, the ways that we just accept what we're told, and we don't think. But then more importantly, how we don't necessarily come to see the necessity it's been said that the problem isn't actually the problem. Our attitudes and observing the problems are the problems. And I guess that's actually kind of what I was speaking to. There are very real actions, poverty, war, etc. But it is very real and true that it's very real and true that these problems are only created because of man's inability to find peace and to justify, why we need the money or we need this or we need what have you. So, we like to think of ourselves as just such an advanced society, and yet we can't even agree and get along and take care of people and perhaps allow people a birth to live their lives differently than us. And as long as they're not hurting people, or if we think that they're hurting themselves. And I'm one of the worst. Sometimes because of the way that I see things, loving and having such love for people that I interact with closely, if I see them, as again an outside observer making these unhealthy choices or these choices that I can't help but see might be contributing like directly to their pain and their struggle, that's been a really interesting lesson as I've had to learn like the degrees of possibly stepping back and again living and not living. Because though it's also very true that to be compliant, to not speak up on these things, we're enabling and we are allowing for harm. Kind of getting back to the Gita, just action, compliance. We have a voice, we have eyes, we have ears, and I get it. I think a lot of times it's very easy to just kind of shrink ourselves in an attempt to just get by. But, and I don't want to project, I certainly hope that you have joy, and I hope that you don't necessarily have these moments of pain and suffering that I can perceive when I'm, sitting alone in my room being all emo, just like, why can't everybody get along? Why do we hate each other? And I have to laugh, not to cry, because I do. It's such a bleeding heart. Like, I see the ways that we don't even realize how we normalize cruelty and callousness and how we just are so able to hurt people. And I don't like bullies, so it's probably the reason that I like to kind of stick to myself, to be honest with you, because it's seeing other people bullying other people and being okay with it and not even realizing it that can become incredibly problematic for me. And obviously my own challenge is me just making sure that I'm showing up, and that especially trying to exist as a form of compassion. Like, I need to understand that, and I need to not necessarily get aggressive, and I need to be able to hold a space. And so that's funny, because part of it is actually being calm enough to potentially advocate in instances, but not necessarily get rocked. Again, you go low, I'll go lower. That doesn't mean don't advocate for yourself. So in these instances, when people are like, oh, Boy Scout, blah, 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 not even slightly, just speaking to critical thinking and compassion. It's about actually being able to live your values and to actually exemplify them. If, our talk is beautiful and our plans and our intentions and we can, the illusions that are created, and not even illusions, but the communications, just when we open our mouths, such an interesting power source. But so is tangible action, so is our behaviors. In fact, I would lovingly argue that our actions are actually the cash on demand for the checks that our mouths write. So, on that note, I gotta start getting ready to rock this. I'm so blessed. Like, I work from home, I'm in my jammies, and gonna start getting ready for the day. But I'm loving you guys this day and always. And as ever, I know it's a bit scattered. Haven't thought of a title yet, but just speak, act. There is no wrong, but tread softly, tread carefully. You are divine, righteous, God's source light, whether you believe it or not. And you are powerful, and your actions, whether you happen to observe it or not, cause such goodness and harm and all sorts of things. Mine too. I try to be mindful of it. And perhaps that's part of the problem, you know? You hear a lot of people say, oh, it's not that deep. Everything is that deep. Not necessarily drowning in the guilt, remorse, etc. One could go mad if one were to just sit and think about all of the ramifications that their particular actions could have. It is that deep. You're that deep. You are beautiful. And you're growing and learning. And sometimes you suck. Sometimes I suck. We cannot always be at our best. We cannot always, whether we mean to or not, just be without causing harm to something. And that's beautiful too, though, because that's part of the process. We can grow and learn, and we are all in this together, and we are making it heaven or hell. So I'm loving you this day and always. Think some new things. Live your best life. And how are we changing the world? Mwah!